Hola, welcome to another episode of Unscripted, and I have the great pleasure to introduce Juan Fernandez. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing good, David. How are you?
Good, good. So you are a pro in the cybersecurity space, and specifically MSP and MSSPs, and it's a great pleasure to have you on board. And I would love to talk shop about what it is that you do and what is
Sure.
the contribution associated with this space. But before we get started, to kind of provide some clout around your background and so on, how you get started, how did you become a
Yeah.
master in this particular domain?
Well, I don't know that I'm a master per se, and I think we're always lifetime learners, right? But if I can share any advice, it's just a lot of what I've learned is just being in the industry for a really long time. I started off at a many years ago, I think 20 plus years ago, in a little place called AOL. And I learned a long time ago it was, all about educating people on how to get on the internet. It was really important to help them understand best practices and understand the meaningful ways to stay protected online. And that's always resonated with me. So, obviously I got started there and then I worked my way through my career, growing up as an engineer by trade and really focusing on, certifications and education to like make sure that I knew what I was talking about. So I've been really focused on that for quite some time. And really, the important piece of that is what, those best practices and really focusing on, the protection aspect really helped me to grow in my career and just kind of really do some really awesome things and, head up some major organizations, build massive corporations. And, one of the things most recently I think that I'm most well known for is, building and scaling a large MSP where I went 0 to 20 million in about 6 years. But again, that's the thing that everybody sees. But it also comes back to learning. I had an MSP, or not even MSP, back in the early 2000s, where I had an IT company that provided breaks fix services, and I burned that to the ground. So as a young entrepreneur, I had to learn really fast on how to do things. So my second shot at it was a success, but the first one I learned a lot of lessons, and that's where I think I can give back. I learned a lot about configuring systems. I have been through it all, right? We know the old Novell days. I was there for Y2K, if I can say that out loud. I mean, I've been here for some time, and I've stayed in this industry just being, and I think it's really interesting to see how we've evolved, and being at this new frontier of virtual infrastructures and cloud infrastructures, coming from building computers back in the old days to now having all these virtual infrastructures. It's really really interesting to see. And so I've been a big proponent of staying up with technology, and thank God I have, because this is the way the world's going.
Absolutely. And let me ask you this: do you still have a couple of those AOL CDs somewhere hidden in the drawer?
No, but
Tell me the truth.
I do have something that I've kept over the years. And this is probably the one thing of all my books, because all of us that have been engineers, we've kept all of our books forever, and all those Microsoft and all your study, your CompTIA AOL study guides. This little guy has made the test of time. And I have kept this. This was the original Webster's Pocket Dictionary from back in the early 90s. And this was the internet. This is all the websites from back in the day. This is as deep as the internet was. And so this
Wow,
little guy has been with me for a long time.
that's a timepiece right there. That's amazing. It, and I remember back in the day, they were, people were asking, how are they going to make money off the
Yeah,
internet? It was a wild, wild west. But let me ask you this, and we have limited time, so I wanted to make it worthwhile for the people watching, specifically
sure.
MSSPs, MSP owners that potentially have a lot to learn from somebody like yourself. What? So you've been there, done that.
Sure.
You have the scars to show for it. You have the success, the badges to show for it as well. What would you say are the top three things that make an MSP MSSP successful and differentiate themselves from all the 10,000s other service providers?
A lot of people ask me that question. And it's like, Juan, how do obviously we all do the similar thing, and I also get asked the other question, because I also run the MSP Growth Coalition, right? So now when I came out of my MSP, I created the MSP Growth Coalition to help MSPs kind of find their way. And one of the other things that I did was also wrote the MSP Owner's Handbook, right? And so the real reason for that was I needed to get everything that I knew out to help people as this initiative that I have called Live, Learn, Give, right? You live it, you learn about it, you figure it out, and you give back. And as we talk about those things, the big piece of that is strategy, right? Figuring out what your unique IP is. And a lot of people say, Juan, can you give us some KPIs that, we can shoot for? I stop them and say, hold on a second. I don't want you to be like everybody else. If I give you an industry number, it's going to make you like everybody else, right? And then ultimately, at the end of the day, when I'm like everyone else, I'm gonna, my value is relatively similar. So the next thing I compete on is price. That's going to drive me down to zero. Trust me, I can tell you, zero sum game is not a business model, right? And so, what I do is help them understand, the biggest thing about building a company that's truly scalable, and I use this equation all the time, is if the problem equals Juan, Juan is the problem. And so if you're empowering your people to be successful, that's the whole unlocking of the ecosystem of awesomeness, right? That's how you crack the code on growth, is you empower your people to be successful in their roles. Now I say this on purpose because in order to get to the point where I have a strategy on how to build my company, I need to make everybody responsible for the growth of the company. So back to the KPI conversation, right? If you give everybody a number, let's just say, just go to somebody and say, what's your, give me 4 numbers that you think are things that you could measure in your day-to-day job. I don't care if that number is 0 today. Doesn't even matter. What you do is you make everyone responsible for something, right? And as you go along each month and everybody reports back this number, maybe 5 is high, and what's 5 mean? Is it good or is it bad? Oh, well, I feel like 5 might be bad. Okay, well, how do we get back to -5? And you make them responsible for something. All of a sudden, you have people that care about their job, right? Because at the end of the day, people that care about their job, and I say this during the Great Resignation, it was because there was no process for employees to be successful. So a lot of people that lost a lot of their people that told me that they didn't have a process for employee success. Ultimately, that tells me they don't have a process for customer success. Because without your people, you can't make your customers successful. They're going to be unhappy, and that's going to rub right into your customer experience. And so when you make your employees feel like they're needed, when you make them responsible for the growth of the company, and you're fully transparent, you all of a sudden land up with these great things called KPIs. And those KPIs are unique to how you do business, not how the world wants you to do business, right? Or the industry is telling you, here's how you should do it. Because even if the industry tells you here's what an average KPI looks like, that's still like so unattainable, right? I can't get there because I have so many things that have to change to make that happen. Well, that's perfect. That's because you're unique. Stay unique. That's your competitive advantage. And I say this all the time, and I say, okay, once you figured out your numbers and you got an employee team that's rallying behind their numbers, championing towards some greater good, guess what? Now you have a sales and marketing campaign, because now you can illustrate how you're uniquely different than everybody else. And I bet my headphone just died because it's connected to my phone. So
No, it's still on.
that's the whole point behind how I tell people to do it. So focusing on your employees, giving them meaningful, actionable aspects of ways they can achieve success within the organization, and then they feel responsible for their division. That's the thing. And I'm like, when a problem would go through that and it'd line up at my desk, I'd be like, hold on a second, can you explain how you got to me? Because that seems like I have a problem, right? I talk about using a slot machine as an analogy. I had to figure out how to put the quarter in, and the dollar came out every single time. And inside of that, when you think about pulling the lever down and you see it spin, if I don't hit sevens every single time, why not? Right? There must be something going on inside of the mechanism that's not giving me the output. So maybe I need to go look at that number and assign that number that's failing to somebody to make sure that that number always hits, so that I always get sevens and I get the dollar. So it's really important to go through your process, whether it be your onboarding, you go your tier 1 support, your tier 2 support, your tier 3 support, your tier 4 support, your project delivery, your customer onboarding. You just break each one of those down into meaningful processes within your organization and operate them effectively. So that's how I help MSPs kind of think through it and really help have them go to market with it.
It's amazing to me that you didn't bring the word technology at all in this whole narrative.
Mm-mm.
It's all about the people, but yet there are so many vendors out there that touting and reaching out to MSPs and
Sure.
MSSPs saying, hey, this is what customers are looking for. You can make a lot of money. This is kind of the revenue generation secret, the silver bullet, and so on. And you're smiling because you probably have an opinion about that.
I do. And I am a very opinionated person about that. For any vendor that's ever done business with me, they either like it or they don't like it. And when I was an MSP, I was very stern about how I managed my internal program, and I was very diligent and very dedicated to the vendors that I had, because when I just talked about this on another webinar recently about this, and it's called vendor due diligence, right? And it's not about whether or not the vendor has the products or programs that are secure and SOC 2 and all those regulative aspects. How do I make money with you? What's my cost of implementation? How do you empower me to work with my partners? And what's my go-to-market strategy? Do we ride along? Are you guys doing business with me? Like, what's this? That's my due diligence, right? How am I making money with you? And I used to stack up anytime. I waited 2 years to roll out cybersecurity in our organization because I wasn't ready, right? I wasn't willing to take on the limits, the liabilities, the opportunity, because if you touch that, it's your responsibility, right? So I waited, and everyone's like, why aren't you just doing this? And I'm like, because I'm not ready to offer it. I need my contracts to be in line. I need my conversations to be in line. I need my process to be perfect before I implement this. Because if I don't have all these things figured out, it's going to be a failure. And I can't have my customers have an experience that isn't very clean and very synergetic with this process. So we'd interview tons of vendors, and then we'd come back to the table and measure them up and figure out which ones were the right fits that were going to work for us and met the reasoning. And then we would use that as a battle card to have conversations with customers when they'd say, well, why did you pick that vendor over others? And we would show them a matrix of, here's why. And
Yeah.
here's the reason that it's meaningful for your business. I needed to have a conversation because, again, remember, the seat that we have at the table with the customer is I'm buying on their behalf, right? And when you think about that, you think about our partnership. I saw something, and it's interesting that when I read it, it was like, why do we call customers customer instead of clients? And I'm like, why don't we call them partners? Like, I don't want to call them a client either. I want to call them a partner. Like, that's how close I want to be with my customers as an MSP or an MSSP. And I need to prove my worth in that arena. And so I don't jump on vendors. I love toys and tech. Trust me, I'm just a geek gadget guy like anyone else, and I absolutely love the new flashy thing. Um, but I also have responsibility to my partners, and those are my internal customers, which are employees and clients, however you want to call them. Everybody needs to be able to support something that we're doing. So everybody has to be educated on why we're doing it. They have to be educated on how we do it. They have to be educated on the support of those things. And that takes time, right? So I can't just go and grab it. And I said this on another interview. Did you just add an S to your chest? And I know we love to just be like, we're Superman and we have everything and we're come to save the day because I have this new product. And it's like, you are not. Hold on, MSSP. Hold on. We just got MSP lined up. Hold on. Don't put that other S on there just yet. Hold on. You better make sure you're made of iron before you do it, right? Like, you can take a bullet and you're faster than the speed of light. Like, you better make sure you are able to do that, because if you're not those things, then what are you, right? And you might be out of business. And that's the biggest concern by grabbing something that you're not ready for. It's like touching a hot frying pan. It's like, hold on. That thing's really hot. Make sure you got an oven mitt on, right? So, and that's where I caution MSPs when they're looking at stuff like that. Like, I know it's flashy and sexy and you think it's going to unlock your business and this could be the one thing I add that just sends me through the roof. You better have a process for doing it. Trust me, like a good solid process. I added $2 million in net new revenue when we turned the key on cybersecurity. And the reason that I did that is because I knew exactly what customers I was going to sell it to. I knew my talk track. I knew the exact approach. I knew exactly how we were going to educate them. I knew the need that they had, and I knew exactly how we were going to penetrate that market. I did it as a budget control item where I said, look, we know if we turn this spigot on right here, this is how much water is going to flow. Here's how many people we're going to need. Here's all the things that I need. And I encourage everybody that's out there to think through how you ingest vendors and what your go-to-market strategy is for those types of things.
I can see a lot of challenges there, though, because as you mentioned, sometimes it's the shiny object.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get requests from your existing customers asking you, "Can
Sure.
you solve this for me?" And then on the flip side as well, on the other side of the fence, you have all the vendors are saying, "Oh, we're channel first, we got you covered." And
Yeah.
there's a lot of moving parts. But then when it comes out to an actuality, as you mentioned, you as a cybersecurity, that decided to jump into with both feet into cybersecurity, it took you 2 years.
Yeah.
And somebody like yourself took 2 years. But some of these MSPs are jumping very quickly into almost like not by design, but just due to the fact that their customers are asking for it and say, okay,
Sure.
why
I
not?
get it. External pressures, I get it. I totally get it. I'm not saying that you can or you shouldn't. I mean, if you're at that point where you feel like you can pivot that fast and you're willing to bolt it on and you have the expertise to deliver it, or you're bolting onto a partner that has the expertise to deliver it and it's really an add-on, sure, by all means. But make sure you have all of the limits and liabilities covered. Like the one that's going to get you is the one that was going to land you deposed on a courthouse steps, right? I mean, it's the worst thing to ever be sued. And you're like, well, I didn't know. Just know before you go, right? Just look at all the angles of what your liability is. Make sure you're checking your insurance policies and make sure you're covered before you step into that arena. That's my biggest opportunity there. When I see them doing it all the time, and there's nothing really that wrong with it. Just be more diligent about why.
And from a cybersecurity perspective, it's
Sure.
such a fast-moving target, right?
Mm-hmm.
If ransomware wasn't a thing, really 2 years ago, all of a sudden it became, front and center. Then now you see cyber insurance that has certain requirements associated with them. So all of a sudden the customers are freaking out. How do you make sure that you keep abreast of the current changes and allow you to offer back to your clients or partners, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and being like the go-to person for that, and make sure that you have all your bases covered?
I think one of the slippery slopes is we say yes to a lot of things, right? I talk about this in my cybersecurity sales masterclass. And one of the things is, we often hear the term, a jack of all trades, but a master of none. And I challenge everybody in masterclass to become a master of some. And I'm very meaningful about that in all aspects because, I couldn't have been good at being an engineer or a programmer or a technician if I didn't fully understand how it worked, right? And so for me it's really a danger ground when I'm stepping into an arena that I don't understand completely. I need to be able to understand that at 100%. Like when I started off at AOL, the reason I went and got my A plus was because I couldn't fix a computer. I didn't understand how to fix it, but I knew if I could fix the problem. The problem wasn't that they didn't like the internet or want to get on. Their computer wasn't working operationally appropriate. So when I got my A plus, I remember troubleshooting computers over the phone, walking people through, telling them how to do things to fix the problem that they had. And that's the same thing now in cybersecurity that I think we have is, we need to focus on best practice. Internally in your organization, how did you implement best practice in your organization? And explain that story to your partners externally. Like that's a big thing. And that's why I say a lot of people may not be ready because maybe we don't have best practice stitched up internally. And there's so much liability in that. I mean, and so when I think about how I keep up to date, I stay on top of, there's a lot of resources. There's so much data coming so fast. It can be really easy to get overwhelmed by it or feel like you have to do something because I'm like the whole world's burning down. I focus on stuff. I focus on the things that I can fix, and I focus on the things that I can impact. And I'm very diligent about those. And I'm like, okay, look, I'm going to pick this segment of business, which is the most juvenile aspect, which is the educational piece of why you need security, and go to market with my customers with that. They don't really need to know all about MDR, XDR. They don't need to know about how I'm protecting them on the back end. What they need to know is that their business is going to stay solidified and that I've taken care of it and that all of the offerings that I have underneath the house, under the umbrella, are going to protect their business. I did this on Shark Tank, right? They asked for the best cybersecurity sales presentation, and actually Bob Kosis just posted it on LinkedIn as a memory of 2018. And it was one of the most amazing moments because what they asked for wasn't what they wanted. And I went on stage and said that to them. I was like, what you asked for isn't what you want. What you want is faster route to market to enable the modern workforce to be able to increase your products and profitability. That's what you care about. You don't care about this question that you asked. So customers even asking questions about cybersecurity, like, well, what are we doing about cybersecurity? And I'm like, you don't care about that. And you don't even want to ask a tech guy about cybersecurity. You're not going to understand a word I say. What you care about is that I got your business covered. And let me show you how I do that. Like, it's super simple and quick when you think about it from that perspective. But I think so many of us answer the question, and that's the slippery slope, right? We start trying to talk tech to customers, and it gets out of hand. So,
And how do you make sure that you are, as I mentioned, once you start having that conversation, understand their business and their goals? Because it's really interesting. Because you're right, it's so easy to get into the slippery slope of talking
sure.
tech and talking cybersecurity, but essentially they're only partnering with you because you are a business enabler.
Yeah.
You're there to help them sell more, become more efficient, and do all of that with little risk as possible.
Mm-hmm. The big thing I do, and again, I encourage MSPs to do this, is ask a lot of questions about their type of business, right? Because, and I love this part, right? Because people often say, Juan, I have all these meetings with all these customers, but yet all I get is no at the end of it. And it's like, okay, and I hate to say this out loud, but it's like, if you walked away with a no, it's probably because you brought it with you. And they're like, what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, how rude is that? And I'm like, so if a customer invited you into their office, they're not asking you if I need technology. They're telling you I need technology. And now they're just trying to figure out if you're the right partner for them, right? This is speed dating 101. And if I come in and I start telling you all about myself, anytime you ever sat at a table, you ever heard somebody talk all about themselves, it's kind of a turnoff, right? So the worst thing we could do is come into a customer meeting and talk all about ourselves, right? It's like, let me get to understand whether or not we're a good fit, and let's meaningfully have that conversation, and let me understand more about you and your goals and dreams in life and the pursuit of happiness. What does that mean to you, and where do you want your business to go, and can I make technology a strategy for you and your business, right? That's my job. And if so, if I feel good about that and that relationship, and you feel comfortable with me, and you feel like, you know what, he has a plan that might work, or I like this person enough, they're going to say yes. They're not even going to talk about price. They're going to just be like, let's do this. But so many times we get into the role of talking way too much about ourselves, having way too much conversation about our product, getting way too technical, and answering the questions without asking any of them.
But Juan, is that because, listen, just being a devil's advocate here, right? So
Sure,
you
sure,
go
sure.
in, you go into a meeting, and you have 35 minutes or 45 minutes, and you almost feel like this stressed out because you're gonna have to deliver value. And
Yeah,
so before you even know it, you start talking about yourself and the things makes you special, and you forget. By the time you look at the clock and there's 3 minutes left on the time that you have allotted, and then you ask a couple questions and the meeting is done. I think that the stress, and they just go in there and kind of barf all over just the knowledge that they have and how much
yeah,
qualification, and you're smiling because that's true.
I do. And we do that oftentimes. We talk too much about tech. And here's the thing, like if somebody invited me into their house, like, the last thing I'm going to tell them is how great I am. That's going to be the last thing I say. Honestly, I feel like, even personally, I get embarrassed by how much I've done sometimes, and people recognize it. I just don't feel like I should be recognized for anything that I've done. I'm just here to do a job, and I'm here to help people. But, asking questions to them is probably the most essential thing. I talk about it all the time. And it's like, if you ask the right questions, it's called a deal autopsy. If you ask the right number of questions, it's amazing if you keep asking those questions and you track that output. Because if you see the heat map emerging that this question resonates, and if this yes pops out more and more every time, the more yeses I get, the more closed deals I get. But we don't do that. We just keep going in and just saying the same thing, and we're like, I never close a deal. It's like, because you're just pitching. Like, you're not engaging. You got to stop for a second. Like, are we a good fit? Like, it's super easy. I would go in and say, hey, I bet you have this problem. Or how do you feel about this kind of problem? I do this in the Sales Cybersecurity Masterclass. It's like, ask the question. I'm not asking you a question that I don't know you already have. I know it hurts, right? It's like a physician. I use this analogy. When you go into a doctor's office and you go and you have a pain in your leg and you're like, doctor, I got a pain in my leg. And he's like, oh, no, you know what? I've seen this before. We're going to have to cut that thing off. You're not going to be able to walk. We're going to need to put you on crutches. Let me go in and get you an order for a wheelchair. And you're like, whoa, 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 man. I don't think it hurts that bad. No, no, no. I'm telling you, I've seen this. I'm going to say it. You're just going to need a wheelchair. And you're like, hold on. I'm going to go get a second opinion. Next guy you go talk to, and he's like, well, let me ask you a couple questions. And it's like, well, I'm thinking you're going to need a prescription. You might need some chiropractic work. You may need to go see some specialists and come see us every day for the rest of your life. That's probably what's going to happen here. And you're like, I don't know if I like that one either. So you go get a third opinion, and you go, and he starts asking you a ton of questions. And he's like, you know what? Honestly, I think you got a pinched nerve. Here, look, do some stretching exercises, and call me if it returns. But I'm pretty sure you just got a pinched nerve. And you're like, I like this guy. The next thing you know, I'm going to tell everyone in my family to come to this guy, right? That's how this works, right? So if you're prescribing wheelchairs and crutches, then you should slow down a little bit, doctor, right? And this is the beauty of it, right? We look at it from the outside and it's like we've experienced these things in life, but yet we go and do it. And it's like, oh, when I see it from the lens of my own reality, it's like, oh man, I prescribed a wheelchair yesterday.
I love that, Juan, and it's been a real pleasure. I want to be cognizant of your time, and I know you're super busy, but I would love to do this again and maybe dive into some other topics.
Sure.
But until then, what is the easiest way for people to reach out to you, get more information, books, whatever the case may be, consult?
Come over, MSPOwnerHandbook.com. Go pick this up. This is a give back book for everyone that sells. We're actually giving away certification, so the money is going into a fund that we're giving back to the community. So if you need certification, come and apply. Also, come find me over at HacWare.com. I have a wonderful opportunity to be the global channel chief over there. So we have a great MSP cybersecurity sales enablement masterclass we do every 2 weeks. We also have a LinkedIn cybersecurity community that we'd love to have you guys be a part of. So come join us over there. You guys are looking for tips, tricks, or just some good jokes, maybe another doctor pun. Love to have you.
Thanks so much, Juan. It's been a real pleasure. And again, thank you for being an inspiration for a lot of MSP and MSSP owners. Looking forward to see you the next time. And for those who joined, thanks very much. And see you at the next episode. Be safe online as offline as well.